Tell us about being part of the Supervision project.
The supervision project for me has really enabled me just to stop in my busyness and reflect and be challenged on just my kind of daily practice. Sometimes I think we're all trying to figure things out. I've been doing my role for over 10 years now in the youth sector. And there are still things that may be hurdles for me. That can range from anything from some challenges or support from a young person or staff members or
Managing staff members, it's really.
yeah, or just how do I approach a particular circumstance? And so to be able to kind of, I see it more being able to bounce my thoughts off someone who can ask me questions that can help me arrive to an answer.
Yeah, like you get out of that whole like stuck doing it the way I've always done it or what we
Yeah.
done, and you be like, I like how he strips it back to the basics. Like, is this safe? Is this best for the young person? Is it sustainable? It just like brings you back, doesn't it?
Yeah, I really feel that, as I said, like we know what we know, and sometimes we don't know what we don't. Sometimes it's just being able to speak to someone, a fellow professional who has a lot of experience or more experience than I do, that I have, and just to sometimes be encouraged and also challenged. And sometimes it's not that my supervisor's the oracle, but he can actually just ask me questions that make me think about things that I may not have thought of. It's almost like having a financial advisor or, to be able to say, come, let's look at this issue and let's kind of try and work it out, but without being told you need to do this, you need to do that. Yeah, I think it's very helpful.
I agree with you. It's like, oh, like you was just like, it's not a prescription, and this won't ever happen exactly the same again. But it's like, yeah, you can explore it with someone else. I never go in knowing what I'm going to talk about either. Do you? I just let it come.
Well, it's funny you're saying that because there's sometimes there has been a few occasions where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm glad I really need this now. I'm being faced with this issue.
Okay.
And there have been a couple of instances when I'm like, oh, what am I going to talk about? Am I forcing? I feel like I've advanced, there's nothing else to discuss. But then, lo and behold, we find something to speak about for an hour, and that's been really helpful. And I guess what it does is it forces me to really think about certain areas where I might think, oh, that's not that big a deal. I've got other things to deal with, but it enables me to just stop and, as I said, reflect and maybe deal with some things that aren't major, but many majors make a minor. Many minors make a major.
Absolutely, because we always deal with like the young people stuff, and you're talking about their needs, and then like you push all them other things, and if we don't deal with them, it's actually still there in the back of your mind, doesn't it? How do you feel about being a super?
It feels like gone full circle, and so having learned, I feel it feels good to be able to give back. I think to have gone through. I remember getting into youth work, let's say a decade ago, and feeling that I was working it out then. And even after all this time, I'm not working it out as much, but there is still a lot from all that learning, I feel that I can impart some of that knowledge or wisdom, but at the same time, similar to my supervisor, where I'm not necessarily being prescriptive, I'm more helping that person, asking that person sometimes difficult questions, helps them arrive at where they need to be. And I think that it's important to kind of build a rapport where their supervisee feels comfortable to be able to explain some of their challenges, their fears, their anxieties, their successes as well. I think it's important to acknowledge progress that you've made. as opposed to just focusing on just what you haven't done.
We're quite bad at that in the sector, aren't we?
Yeah.
We never stop to celebrate the
Yeah.
successes. We're just like, but then this thing, this thing, this thing. But it's like, yeah,
You
that's
know,
nice.
but I feel that overall, being able to offer this supervision opportunity, this external supervision opportunity, has been really good for myself, and I'm sure it's been good for other practitioners who have chosen to access the opportunity, because, as I said, we only know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. So if other people are open to hearing someone else's voice, and if that gives them more sense of direction, where the young people will ultimately benefit, and also our staff teams will ultimately benefit
100%.
as well, then it's definitely a positive. And then also there's something around us, not even as a professional, but just as an individual. We have our own personalities and our own characters. And so, for example, if I'm naturally introvert as opposed to extrovert, then it doesn't matter about my professionalism. That's my character. That's my nature. So there's going to be certain things about my individual character that may cause barriers for me. And so that may be that I don't like confrontation, for example. So if a person doesn't like
Or some
confrontation
people love
in
it.
general, or some people love it. And so if that person is now a manager, and let's say quite rightly so, it doesn't change from the fact that they don't like confrontation. So then how do they deal with a challenging young person or a challenging member of staff? Just because you have, I don't know, gone on a managerial course, it doesn't mean you're equipped with those skills where you're still feeling.
Or you've got those skills, but it's like head and heart then, isn't it? Because you've learned that you're supposed to do something,
Yeah.
but innately you feel gooey. I have that a lot in management because my team is young, where I'm like, oh, but they're still like so young. So the youth worker, or maybe being a woman, both in me wants to be like, oh, look after them. But the manager's like, but you didn't do the thing that I wanted you to do, and you had adequate time.
Yeah. So I think, so there's those things about just an individual person, because some things aren't skills, because someone could be, it's almost like being a parent. You could have all the skills in terms of your job and professionalism, but in terms of how you're managing relationships, they essentially, youth work, it's about relationships. There's an ultimate skill that you can have, but every relationship is different.
There's lots of different personality types in youth work, isn't there? There's
so many.
There's not just one person. We've all got good qualities that help us in youth work, but they might be different qualities in different people.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. So just on an individual, on a personal level, I know who I am, and I know the instances that I can find challenging. As I said, whoever that be, it may be with my own management. How do I better communicate with them? Or my staff team, how do I better communicate with them? Or young people, how do I manage the push and pull of being a manager, with also engaging with young people and giving them the time that I can clearly see that they want. And then at the same time, being good at delegation. And then at the same time, looking to evolve and develop the service. And at the same time, working with the voluntary and statutory services, as well as supporting parents. All of these things are a pull and pull of your time.
100%.
And that you may struggle with, or you may flourish with. But nevertheless, it's about just taking stock of these, whatever one of those instances on any given month,
or week, or day.
yeah, and being able to speak to your supervisor and say, you know what, this is going well, but I feel that it could have been better, or next year, this is where I want to be, and I'm unsure exactly how I'm going to get there, or these are my plans for that. And then just having that conversation. Sometimes my supervisions may be on multiple subjects.
Same.
But then on other times it may be a pressing subject, and that just takes time. And sometimes I think I'm going to discuss one thing and then it goes the other way.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I didn't even realize that was bothering me.
Yeah,
And we started talking. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the power of conversation.